Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ignorant Intellectual on Media. Today, I thought we'd do another mixed haul. I seem to be doing these a lot because I seem to be buying a lot. Um, there was a lull there back a little while where I couldn't find anything really, and then stuff just started popping up. Uh, the main for this one will be a bunch of Blu-rays that a guy who moved from his old house into his new house, he's moved into a new house and he doesn't want to bring his a Blu-ray library with him, and so he decided to sell it all. So I got like 140 or so Blu-rays for like $160. So out of all of them, I probably am going to keep maybe 20 of them and then just resell the rest. But uh, a lot of them were to complete a bunch of different, more of the mainstream films that I was missing certain films in. Like all the X-Men films, all the the DC universe, extended universe films. Some of those, the Marvel, the Infinity War saga, some of those films, and some others that he had, but most of them I already have. So, but they're easy to resell. So if I was going to get them for like almost a dollar, a dollar a film, and I can sell them for probably anywhere between $3 and $5 a film, then why not? Just a little bit of work. I'll spend like $160 and get like maybe 400 or 500 for it. So um, I'm not afraid of a bit of work. All right. So, but I thought I'd go through them all to see what you think. All right. So I think we'll leave those till the last. I think we'll do some books and then we'll do all the Blu-rays and then we'll finish with some books because there's some more books over in that direction under all the Blu-rays. Right. So, um, all right. So first up is Siddhartha. I don't know if you've read this or not. One of the most acclaimed and best-selling spiritual classics of the 20th century. It's an extremely good book if you haven't read it. Herman Hesse is his greatest book. So when I saw this, I don't see this a lot out in the wild. So when I do come across it, even if it's in just a little bit of not great, because like I've told you in previous videos, the number one thing when it comes isn't the title, isn't anything, the edition or anything like that. It's the condition of the book, right? So there are few exceptions where the condition doesn't matter as much. The really, really, really like some philosophy books, some fiction books that are extremely popular and everybody wants to read. You can get them in a lower condition and still sell them for a half decent price. But 95% of all the books, the number one thing you should be looking for if you're going to resell them is the condition of the book. It needs to look new. It needs to look new if you're going to sell it for a half decent price. Okay, so that, for example, this one, it's not exactly new, but I can sell it for like probably around $5, right? So um, this book chronicles the spiritual evolution of a man living in India at the time of the Buddha, a tale that has inspired generations of readers. It is an extremely good book if you have not read it. Up there with like what else? What are like Pilgrim's Progress would be another spiritual book that maybe it's more bent on Christianity. There's a bunch of them that are like spiritual type of books, but this one might be the best out of all of them. Like philosoph- philosophy and spirituality. Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance would be another one that I would highly suggest you pick up in this kind of vein, right? And there's many others, but Siddhartha is one of the top ones. Except I have a signet classic of Little Women. All right, Louis May Alcott. This book doesn't sell all that much, but she has a series, Little Women, Little Man, and there's a couple other ones in like this series of books. But the Little Women one is the one that sells the most, so I decided to take a chance on that one. Then we have a Penguin's modern classic version of Dubliners by James Joyce. Um, James Joyce is a very difficult read. Okay, so a lot of people kind of want to pick him up because they know how important of a literary person he is, especially to the Irish, but internationally as well. But it's really difficult. Ulysses and Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man. All these are difficult reads. They're not as easy to read. I don't know why. It's just the language that he uses. Um, so but if you can struggle through it, the stuff is pretty good stuff. So, and actually, all the modern classics, they all look like the newest versions of them look like this. And on the back, they advertise other ones that are in the modern. So they have Ulysses and a portrait of an artist as a young man in this series. So uh, penguins are pretty easy to sell. All right, then we got the Divine Romance. All right, so this yoga or yogi, would you call me yogi? I think you would call me yogi. All right, he wrote his autobiography, and it's an extremely popular book. One of the most popular books in Eastern religion and philosophy. Hinduism or Buddhism and stuff like that, right? So he's a yogi, all right. And he's one of the most popular. So when I found the Divine Romance, which is a book, uh, what was this one about again? He has a bunch of them, right? So sometimes it gets confusing which one. Anthology of talks, all right. So basically, it's a bunch of his speeches, all right. So I know this will sell very easily. All right. Then we have the Belly of Paris from Emile Zola. This is the newest version of the Oxford World's Classics from the Oxford University Press. All right, so this one I have not read, so I'm not sure exactly what Zola was writing about when it comes to this one, Belly of Paris. Sorry, I'm still getting over that cold. Unjustly deported to Devil Island following Louis Napoleon's coup d'etat in December of 1851, Florent Quenu escapes and returns to Paris. He finds the city changed beyond recognition. All right, so the Belly of Paris, and it goes on from there. All right, then we have one of the greatest plays of all time, Man and Superman, is probably Bernard Shaw's. Well, he's got so many, right? Bernard Shaw's got so many great um, plays, right? And this is actually um, this blue, the blue, and from Penguin, it's basically his library. It has a lot of his this themed type of book, right? If you notice, this is Bernard Shaw Library, Penguin Bernard Shaw Library, right? So um, uh, they're all they all look like this. So you get like Man and Superman and others in this series of books, and you will if you end up reading um, theater or plays, you will come across Bernard Shaw a lot. Pygmalion, is he the one that did Pygmalion? I think so, right? Um, as you get older, your brain turns to jelly. So, all right, the Tao or the Tao Te Ching of Lao Tzu, translated by Brian Brown Walker. It's one of the big um, what is it? It's a bunch of poetry, right? And sayings and advice. Um, is one of the most widely read and deeply cherished books in the world. A work many consider the wisest book ever written. All right. So it's basically, I don't know how many, there's like 70, 75, 78, 79, 80 pages. It's not a very big one, but it's an advice book from involving Western, sorry, in the East, involving Eastern type of philosophy, right? So, and then we have the whole story version of Little Women, and these ones sell pretty good. All right, because they're very nice to read. So you can have like a small paperback, read Little Women, like I showed you the Signet Classic, or you could pick up something like this, right? Um, it's kind of like a hardcover, but it's like bendable, right? So it's easy to read, just sitting on your chair, and you're sitting, and it looks really nice, right? The pages are big, the words aren't too small that you can't read them, and you got a lot of got a lot of images and background about the book itself as well. So decided to take a chance on that one. All right, so those are the books. So let's start going through all these Blu-rays that I got for $160. Okay, so we got the Blu-ray version of the Lion King. I don't have this one. I've been collecting the live action versions of all their more famous animated films. Like I have Dumbo and I have others in this series. The Jungle Book is another one that's pretty good, and The Lion King. I don't know, I haven't watched this one yet, but it's like the live action version of it. And we got Tron Legacy 3D. He's got a lot of 3D films in this in the library that he had. So I guess he liked watching movies in 3D. So this is the second. You have the Tron back in the 80s, the original one where Jeff Bridges was young. This one is where he's pretty old. and he goes back in, and it's the 3D version of it, and it's got that 3D version of a cover. It's kind of glued onto the slip cover, right? And so I have it, but I have this film already on Blu-ray, so I'm not sure. Maybe I'll upgrade it to the 3D version and this cool design on the front. Then I found then he had a steelbook of Finding Nemo, a Blu-ray steelbook of Finding Nemo. Not pretty nice, eh? Um, it's got the digital copy in, but I'm assuming it's used already. So we'll just switch that backwards. So it has the DVD here, has a Blu-ray here, and then it has extras as well. So this is a really nice addition. So we need to protect this. As soon as I get something and I have the chance, I always get it in some plastic before it starts scratching. So as you've probably seen it in some previous videos, first I put it in a sealable plastic bag, get all the air out of it, and then seal it. And then if it's a steel book, I also buy these things. All right, so it's got this plastic film over it. Take that off. Knocking stuff over because it just don't have a lot of room. Everything's so squished. All right, so then take one of these. You can get 20 of them for $30 on Amazon. All right, just mend it so it's sticking out, and you just take this to protect it. Now, some people don't like to use these plastic things because, especially if you're using a plastic bag as well, bend these back so it's easy. I'm doing a video, Max Oliver. Okay. Love you. All right, so then you slide it in. Okay. And people like the look of. Okay, so people like the look. Half the reason why they're spending the extra money to get a steelbook rather than a regular version of a Blu-ray or a 4K or whatever, even before with the DVDs, was because how nice they look on the shelf. They all look shiny. The artwork is usually really nice, right? But mostly when you put it up and you have the spine, all of them along the line are really uniform, and it looks really, really nice, really, really attractive on a shelf. So that's why people spend the extra money to make it look nice. Because when you are a collector, you want to collect something and make it look nice. That's why they have display cases and everything else that you can put things in, frames and things like that to make your collection look nicer, more pleasing, more aesthetic, right? So now the problem with this is if you put it in a plastic bag, you're dulling it, right? And then you put another plastic case around it and you're dulling it even more. So when you see it on the shelf, it doesn't pop out like if it was naked, right? So some people don't want to protect them, so they'd rather sacrifice the quality of that thing over time and still have that nice aesthetic look. I prefer to actually protect the things that I buy just in case I want to resell it. So now this is protected. I can resell it for a pretty good price because it doesn't have a big huge dent in it. It won't, even if I drop it, the plastic usually will protect it because it's hard plastic, and it'll be easier to resell if I need to resell it. And if I don't, moving it back and forth on the shelf as I'm adding and taking away Blu-rays and DVDs and 4Ks and everything, this thing will get scratched and dented and everything. So you have a plastic casing over it. You never have to worry about that. Right, so that's Finding Nemo, one of Disney / Pixar's greatest film. I don't know, probably every person on the planet has seen it. And the sequel, Finding Dory, but this one is about the father whose son gets lost in the ocean because a fisherman comes along and he gets caught in a net full of I don't know what the fish that he was fishing was, but anyway, he eventually ends up in a dentist's office on the coast of Australia. So his father, they're clownfish, so they're little fish, he doesn't give a crap. He's going to find his son no matter what. He's going to die trying. He meets up with some interesting characters along the way, and he finally gets his son and everything. It's a really, heartwarming film, like most Disney films are. All right. So next up is okay. So next up, he was a Star Wars fan, so he collected these versions, the 20th Century Fox Blu-ray / DVD editions of the first 6 Star Wars films. So you have, it's in a box package like that, right? Um, so these are the first 3 films, or 4, 5, and 6, in a nice Blu-ray box set. And then he picked up 1, 2, and 3, which is the 4th, 5th, and 6th film. Same kind of deal, in a nice box set. And then he picked up The Force Awakens, which is number 7. All right. And The Last Jedi, which is number 8. And remember, they had 2, single one-offs, which was Rogue One and Solo. So he picked up those 2, but I guess he stopped buying during about that time because the Rise of Skywalker, the 9th film, he doesn't have. So I have all these films already. So I'm just gonna sell them all. I just want to make sure. What I do is I'll check whenever I get something that I already have. I'll check if it has a dust jacket on it or not, or do I have the the naked Blu-ray? And if I don't have the one with the dust jacket on it, I'll just switch them out because I like the dust jackets. If I could get all of them in dust jackets, I'm talking about books, slip covers, it'd be cool because they look more uniform when they're on the shelf. They're all like rectangular rather than curved, right? So it's pretty nice. All right. So anyway, so those are the Star Wars films that he had. All right. Then he had Snow White and the Huntsman in another steelbook Blu-ray, but um, the biggest concern of any collector of anything is the amount of space that they have to collect, right? And I don't think this is all that great of a film. Now, the Blu-ray is really nice. I like the Blu-ray. See the back of it? It's pretty, right? And but I'm not the person that goes out and just finds Blu-rays to put on the shelf if it's a film that I'm not going to watch because it's crap or whatever. I didn't think it was all that great of a film, which is one of these ones. So I'll just resell this. So I'm not going to put it in a bag or in a plastic box or whatever, like I showed you the previous one, because I'm just going to sell it. And they're not cheap, those plastic cases. All right, so this is one I'm going to keep just because I like the film, not because it's a great film, but Looper with Joseph Gordon-Levitt. All right, and it's got that 3D. Um, I don't know what you would call that. People with a better language will know he's intellectual. He's got that 3D look. It's nice. The back is kind of boring, right? But it's a nice steelbook Blu-ray, and I like the film, so I'm going to put this and protect it. All right. So I'll just continue to talk as we go along. All right. So next up is uh, a film that everybody like. When I first watched it, this was the height of what's her name, from Mike and Molly. What's her name? I can't remember her name. I'll put the name up on the screen. Extremely funny girl. She's in a bunch of comedies, right? Um, and she's in Bridesmaids, and she kind of steals the show of it, from my understanding. Now, I watched this, but I don't remember it, so it's a bad sign when you watch a film, and then a few years later, you may remember, part of the plot or whatever about the movie, but you don't remember the movie very much, just because it's not something that jumped out at you. So, uh, Bridesmaids was one of those. But then I watched it a second time, all right? And then the second time I watched it, McCarthy, that's her name, isn't it? McCarthy is her last name? Am I? Anyways, so the film is obviously about bridesmaids. There's a wedding, and you have a bunch of girls who are going to be bridesmaids to the bride, obviously, and then it's all the adventures of them. Let's put it that way. Get into some pretty hilarious situations. I don't want to ruin the film for you, but on second watch, I enjoyed it more than I did on first watch, and most of the time that doesn't occur. So it takes a kind of special movie to do that, because usually when you watch a film first, if there's any surprises in it or twists or turns or whatever, um, you don't know about them, right? And so when you watch it, those are new to you, and then you get what the director is trying to do, right? But then there's some films where the second watch is more enjoyable than the first watch, and I don't know why Bridesmaids was one of those films. But like one of my all-time favorite films, um, and the film I consider the greatest Canadian film of all time, which is Exotica, that one is even better on the second watch, when you watch it the second time, because it has a web, it has a web of stories, and you're not sure how they're connected, and slowly that web kind of goes into the center, and then they all connect at the end, and then it goes, oh, and then you watch it again knowing how all these connections are, and you actually enjoy it even more, right? Um, so there you go. There's Looper in a nice um, uh, protection. All right, so here's Bridesmaids. So I'm going to check. I have this on Blu-ray already, but this has a slipcover. I can't remember if the one that I do have, whether it has a slipcover or not, so I'll check. And this one I'm definitely going to keep, even though I have both films, is a digipack of 300, 300 and, what was it, The Rise of the Spartans? What was the second one called? Um, so, so you have a digital copy. It has its own, right? And then you have 300, the complete experience. So maybe it's just the first film. I'm not sure what the complete experience is, but it's nice. It's a digipack. It's got, booklets that's glued to the inside of it, right? So it's cool. So it's a nicer version. I have it on Blu-ray already. Um, so I think I have the second one in a steelbook. I don't think I have the first one in a steelbook. If I have it in a steelbook, then I'll just sell this one, because I prefer a steelbook over a digibook. Um, the complete experience, it doesn't tell me what the complete experience means, though. Does it mean both? If it does, because there's only one Blu-ray in it, it means that both films are on one Blu-ray, so I don't think so. I think it's just, I don't know, let's say an upgraded version of the film. We'll see. All right, and then we have The Dark Tower, which was originally a Stephen King book, and I don't know if Stephen King set out to write books so that they would be turned into films or not, but so many of his books are films. I mean, God, it must be in the 20s or 30s, the number of films that have been made from his books, and he's really prolific when it comes to writing as well. So he can write really quickly, and he puts out books really quickly. And The Dark Tower is, part of the Gunslinger series, right? The Dark Tower series. So this was, I don't know, it didn't go over well, all right, and because it didn't go over well, they're not making any more films. But I think when they first made this film, they were thinking of doing a series of films with it, like it is with the Dark Tower series that Stephen King wrote as a book, right? But I think this one kind of didn't do very well in the theater, and therefore they just didn't continue it. But the film is really good, and Matthew McConaughey, who most people, do you consider him a great actor? I don't really. Lincoln Lawyer is okay. Dazed and Confused. All the different films. I mean, he's eye candy. You know what I mean? Girls like the look of him. But in this film, he did pretty good. It's usually he's playing a romantic lead or a funny guy, or you know um, semi-serious type of filmmaking as well. But this one, he plays like a bad guy, and he does a pretty good job at it, to tell you the truth. Um, and Idris Elba does a pretty good job as well. Now, I don't know why people didn't like this film. I liked it. I don't really clock the director, who's Nico Nicolaj Arkel or Arcel. I don't collect him as a director, but I like this film, so I added to the collection. I'm just going to look to see whether I have the naked version of it or do I have the slipcover for it. If I don't, then I'll just switch the films out. All right, so that's the Dark Tower. Then we got John Wick, the first John Wick. This is extremely good. Um, Keanu Reeves is hit and miss, but the Hollywood keeps um, keeps taking a chance on him. I guess you could say take a chance or whatever, because when he does hit, I mean, he really hits. So he really hit with the Matrix. He really hit with Bob and Doug. Bob and Doug? No, not Bob and Doug. Um, Bill and Ted. Why I say Bob and Doug? I'm Canadian, right? So, um, Bill and Ted, excellent adventure. Put them on the map. Um, the Bigelow film with Patrick Swayze. What was that called? The surfing film where the bank robbers. I'll put it up here, anyways. That was a really good film as well. Um, and the Matrix films, and then John Wick, and he had like Constantine or some of those other films are pretty bad, right? So he kind of hit and miss, but when he hits, man, he hits really big, and John Wick hit really big. And these films do not die. Do you understand what I mean? Every one is really good after the other one. I don't know who does the action scenes. It reminds me of like Corey Young, have the, or John Woo, you know, um, how they do these really professionally styled like, and Keanu Reeves does really good. Um, in the Matrix, he did really good, but this one he did even better, right? So at least in my opinion, there's less CGI and stuff in it, right? So um, and the way he manipulates these weapons is like a professional, really. He must have been practicing a lot. Uh, Reeves must have been practicing a lot to manipulate the weapons that way. Probably sitting down at home in between films, just getting better and better at all these different weapons that he uses, like how to load them quickly and unload them and everything, right? So, um, really slick, really good. Um, some of the best choreographed, action scenes ever put on film, in my opinion. Now, there's four of them. I don't know if they're going to continue because the man is getting kind of old, right? But did that stop Liam Neeson? No, it didn't. Um, so we'll see. But that first film, really good. Basically, if you have not seen it, watch it. It's basically there's this underground worldwide syndicate that he's a part of, and he gets out. He's like a hitman. He gets out by making a deal with his boss to do an impossible task, and he does it where no one else could. And so his boss let him out, and he ended up because he didn't want to be involved. Because he met a girl that he fell in love with, and then she ends up dying of cancer. But after she dies of cancer, he gets a delivery, um, and it's a puppy dog. And so him and this puppy dog bond, and he's not as lonely as he was after. But then these jerks, all right, at a gas station decide to get involved in John Wick's life and end up breaking into his house and stealing his Mustang and killing his dog. He just can't handle that, so he ends up say going back in, right, and just started killing everybody like he's really good at, right? It's extremely good film. All right. So that's John Wick. So he had the first. Did I do these ones? I don't think I did these ones. This one shouldn't be here. All right. So he had the first five um, in the DC universe, the extended universe. So he had Batman versus Superman, Suicide Squad, Justice League, Wonder Woman, and Man of Steel. The first five of them. Now there's others, Aquaman and others after this, but the first five he had, so that's cool. I have all those five, so I'm just gonna check if I have them all with dust jackets or not, and then resell them. I also had the Dark Knight trilogy. One of them doesn't have a dust jacket. Keep saying dust jacket when it should be a slipcover, but anyways. So this is really popular, but this these films, the first one, Batman Begins, was good, all right. But the second one, The Dark Knight, is one of the greatest Batman films, maybe the greatest Batman film of all time. Um, because of Heath Ledger as Joker, he does an extremely good. um, version of the Joker, right? So, um, and the third film was a little bit less as good as the first two, The Dark Knight Rises. But overall, the three films are extremely good, and Christopher Nolan does a great job with the franchise. The problem is that it was so popular that there's just so many of these around that they're so easy to get, and they're really hard to resell because everybody has them already, right? Um, but we'll see what we can do with them. All right, so that's the Dark Knight trilogy. Shawshank Redemption, IMDb's number one, passes The Godfather. This is the number one movie by voters on the IMDb. I don't know why. I wouldn't even put it in my top 10, but that's just me. It's a good film. All right. Oh, who directed it? Yeah, Frank Darabont. I do collect him, so I collect his films. This basically is a film about him. He's wrongly confused. He's set up and he ends up going to prison for something that he didn't do. And then he spends the next decade or whatever um, becoming useful to the guards and the warden because he's a financial wizard and an accounting wizard, right? And so they start using his services, and what he does, he sets them all up in order to escape, right? And the story is very intricate. It's basically narrated by Morgan Freeman, who ends up becoming a very good friend of what's his name, Tim Robbins, right? So, um, and he kind of narrates the whole film, and it is a good film. I mean, it is a really good film, but I wouldn't put it in the top 10. This one would be up there, definitely a Scorsese film, one of Scorsese's best films, and that is The Departed, which is basically the American version, English version of a Hong Kong action film called um, Infernal Affairs. Now, there's a trilogy of Infernal Affairs. I would highly suggest you pick it up if you don't mind subtitles, and if you do, then you're missing out on so many good films if you don't like reading subtitles. But I had a spiel on that in a different video about me and my friend who does not watch films with subtitles, right? So um, anyway, so this film extremely good. Basically about a cop who's a criminal and a criminal who's a cop. So and that juxtaposition, and there's a scene that happens in the later part of the film that you will not see coming, and that will just make this from a really good film to a really great film. That it jumps it from a really good film. Scorsese is really good at these. What was the name? Like Casino and Goodfellas and those films, right? So Mean Streets and things like that. Uh, The Departed is one of his greats, even though it's a copy of the Hong Kong film, right? And then Brad Pitt in Moneyball. This is directed by Bennett Miller, is another director that I collect, and this basically, will you like it if you don't like baseball? I'm not sure, but basically it's about, it's kind of based on a true story about how, um, which team was it? The Oakland, I think it was the Oakland A's, if I remember correctly. Yeah, the Oakland A's use sabermetrics. Bill James. Bill James put out a bunch of books back in, I mean, still is. It's called Sabermetrics. Basically, he takes, math and applies it to baseball statistics, and he can show how a player in the future will most likely um, behave, right? How well they'll do, right? And you use these complicated formulas that Bill James uses. You get, and most people were saying, "No, that's not. You got to go with your gut and stuff like that." But then after a while, you had an influx of people that grew up reading Bill James's books, and they entered baseball, and then they changed baseball. And the Oakland A's were one of the first, right? So hold on a second. So yeah, so that's basically about them, getting into the postseason using sabermetrics, right? Getting players, like let's say a big name player, they don't have a lot of money; they're a small market team, so using statistics and predictions to look on the free agent market and pick up bargains and end up outperforming what most people would have thought they would on paper. All right, and so the next thing he has is the Bourne films. He has the trilogy, the original trilogy, which is what the Bourne Ultimatum, the Bourne uh, Supremacy, and the Bourne Identity. All right, on Blu-ray. And then he has the two films that came after, the Bourne Legacy, which basically is not with Jason Bourne. It's with what's his name, who plays an adjacent character in the Bourne world. All right, and Jeremy Reimer, right? The guy from the Marvel universe. And then they bring Matt Damon back to play Jason Bourne one more time and call it Jason Bourne. So he had all five of the films on Blu-ray. So I already have them all. So I actually have them all on Steelbook, except for Jason Bourne's wasn't on Steelbook. Um, Actually, where are those? Are they down here that I'm going to show? Have I shown you those yet? No, And then next up is the Lord of the Rings extended edition, the trilogy. I think this is the extended version of it. Anyways, it's funny because you see two and you think you'd see three because there was three films, right? But you see two, and actually it's only really one. It's this one. It has all the discs in it, 6 discs for the three films, the films themselves, and then the extras, and then you have another one, and this is just the digital codes on disc, right? Digital codes for it. So it seems kind of waste. This would be what you would need. This once they're used, it's useless. So this whole package is kind of useless, and the box as well. But you're not going to break it up because you're going to put it on the shelf like that, right? So these are extremely popular films. A lot of people argue, and you look on the IMDb and you look at different uh, websites and stuff ranking the films high, and the Lord of the Rings trilogy ranks really high. But I really enjoyed it. I always found them too long. Each film was like over 3 hours long, and I'm going, that's a bit long. But man, the CGI and all the characters and everything in it makes for a very powerful film, and all the the visuals is extremely good. Um, but it was funny because after watching them, then I watched Clerks 2. I don't know if you've seen Clerks 2, the Kevin Smith film, but there's a scene in it where um, I think I can remember their names. I can't. Have an argument on which is better, Lord of the Rings or Star Wars, right? So one guy thinks Lord of the Rings is much better, and the other guy thinks no, it's Star Wars. And he says, you know what the three films were? Is them having a ring and just basically delivering it to a volcano, and the whole film is them walking from one place to another. Basically, is what the whole film is. And if you think about it, it is kind of true. Kevin Smith does have that insight every once in a while, right? So, and it kind of there's two things that happen. That was one of them that I went, you start thinking about it, and then you think about the other one with the Big Bang Theory, where Sheldon's girlfriend there says, "Oh," because Sheldon thinks Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, although it's called Raiders of the Lost Ark, but then they added Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark for some reason. But the original film was called Raiders of the Lost Ark, and he says it's like one of his favorite films, and he wants his girlfriend to watch it with him, and he does, and she goes, "Yeah, it was a pretty good film, but you know, um, Harrison Ford's character Indiana Jones didn't have to be in that film, and it basically would end up being the same way, right? The Nazis go looking for the uh, whatever the Covenant thing is, and then they end up finding it, and Indiana Jones has no, you know, influence on the plot of the film, right? And so kind of funny when you think about that as well. But Kevin Smith kind of made the Lord of the Rings trilogy not as enjoyable to watch after that scene from Clerks 2. All right, so then he also had the trilogy, the new trilogy of the Star Trek films, and I had them on this, right? Um, the three films on DVD in one package. I love that. I love that. If they could always put out these things like this way, that'd be great. It saves so much space on your shelves. So I have the Blu-rays. Actually, two out of the three have Steelbook Blu-rays. The first and the third film I have in a Steelbook Blu-ray. So, anyways, I didn't need this anymore since I got them on Blu-ray. So I'm going to resell that one. And they also had the complete collection of Shrek. All right. So the four films in 3D. I was never a big fan of Shrek, just like I don't know. I really enjoyed Wayne's World. You know, with him playing that character, but when he went on to do the James Bond spoof films and the Shrek films, I never really enjoyed them much. Um, all right, so we're keeping going. All right, so there are so many American Pie films, but really the trilogy is what you want, and he has the trilogy. He had the trilogy. All the other films, the offshoots and the made for DVD films that came out, all you know, trying to suck the life, basically sucks the life. But these three films, the main three films, American Pie, American Pie 2, and American Wedding, are the only films you need in that franchise. They're quite fun. Uh, they're basically the modern version of the Porky's films. If you have not seen Porky's, the Canadian director, what was his name? The guy that did A Christmas Story. What was his name? Anyways, I'll put it up. Oh, wait, I have to try to think of what it is. Um, he did. Bob Clark was his name. All right, so Bob Clark did. He's the one that did A Christmas Story, which was a big hit for Christmas films. Whenever people mention Christmas films, they always mention A Christmas Story about the little boy who wants like a BB gun or a pop gun or whatever it was, rifle. That one, and he also was one of the first directors to do a slasher film, um, and that was Black Christmas, right? So it happened during Christmas as well, and that one was an extremely interesting film because a lot of it was filmed through the eyes of the killer, right? You walked around when the killer turned his head, the camera would move, so it was like you're inside the killer's body as you're driving. It was one of the first films to do that as well. But now, Porky's was a great film. Now, most people panned that film. It does not have a high rating on any site that you look at, but I really enjoyed it. And you know, just the reason for it is because of the age. Like I was like in my mid to late teens. So yeah, so it was my age, right? And I went to see it in a theater in Montreal when my mom was dating an usher or general manager of the theater. So I got in for free, and it was like an 18 plus film, right? So, but they let me go in. I was a little bit younger than that, let's put it that way. And I watched that film. I never laughed. I almost pissed myself laughing so badly when I was in that film. And so, you come along with a film that has a certain form of humor in it, and you're at the exact age that that film is meant for, and you, the two things collide, and basically you end up having one of the. So when you think of all the great films, let's say, what's your favorite greatest action film, right? What's your favorite comedy? What's your favorite? When you look at them, with me, they're probably all going to be films that you watched when you were in your teens, like mid to late teen ends up being because my favorite action film is like Die Hard, which came out in the 80s. My favorite comedy is Porky's, like I said. My favorite romantic comedy is When Harry Met Sally, which is another 80s film. My favorite sci-fi film is Blade Runner, which is another 80s film. So you're seeing a pattern, right? Most of the films that I really enjoyed, um, I came to experience them when I was young. They became my favorite films of whatever genre, right? So my favorite action film, Die Hard, right? So what are some other films? Anyway, so yeah, so Bob Clark did that film, and the reason why I was mentioning Porky's is because basically the American Pies is the modern version of Porky's. It's basically sex humor with teenagers, right? So um, they are kind of funny, but they kind of went a little bit more outrageous than Porky's even did, right? Porky was a little bit more degenerate, right? This one was a little bit more gross. Um, so, anyways, if you haven't watched them, you'll probably laugh if you do watch them. So, all right, so that's the American Pie. Then you have the Ultimate Matrix Collection. Now, this came out on Blu-ray before the fourth film came out. So it has the first three films and the Animatrix, and then another disc of extras and stuff on it. And it's in a really nice hard plastic cover. Actually, this is the one that I had in my collection um, mostly until that fourth film came out, and then they put out another version of it that has all four of the films, and I picked that up and sold this copy of that I had. Now I got it back again. Right? So the films like Keanu Reeves. This is one of the the great action films of the the late '90s or whatever. With and it's basically what was his was it Sartre? Who was the guy that thought up I think therefore I am, the philosophical term, basically saying that the reason why you know you exist and you don't know 100% sure that anything else exists, maybe a trick of your mind or whatever, is that you know that you exist because you think, right? Nothing. You see the world through your senses, but you don't see yourself through your senses. You see yourself inside your head, right? So you know you exist because you think. That's the only reason why you know that exists. Everything else, you're not exactly sure. It could be something put over your eyes. And the Wachowskis ended up taking that idea and running with it and turning it into one hell of a franchise, one hell of an amazing sci-fi series where everybody's hooked up to machines in the dream world that they think is real, so that the machines can they use their body for electricity to run the machines, right? So it's a really good concept, and the Wachowski films were really, really good. Then he also had all the all 8 Harry Potter films. You know, 4 times I tried to watch these films, right? And I never got past I think the fourth one. All right, I watched the first one, got to be 10 times, um, and then the second and the third, and I'm trying, and then it just got so effing boring. These films got so boring um, that I couldn't watch them. I don't know what the. Did you have to read the books first in order to watch the films and enjoy the films? I'm not sure because millions of people read those books right before these films came out, right? Um, so did you have to read the books first and then watch? Because this, I mean, this was a yawn fest after this third film or whatever. I got into the fourth film and then I was like, do I want to watch another one of these films? No, I don't. This is fucking boring, right? So anyway, so um, this is a Blu-ray. There's a DVD version of this as well. I'm not sure if they put out a 4K version of this, but it's basically all 8 of the films in one large Blu-ray case, right? So somebody will buy that quite easily. And then I guess he was also a fan of um, the Mockingjay, Hunger Games, because he has all 4 of the Hunger Games films on Blu-ray. All right, so I already have this in it. It came out in a white package, both on DVD or on Blu-ray, and I got the Blu-ray version of it, where all 4 films are in one package, so I don't have the individual ones like that. All right, so those were pretty good. Basically, about was it 12 or 13 districts that surround the main city on Earth, and basically there was a rebellion against the way things were done because there was like an apocalyptic happening at some point, and so the city revolted. I mean, the outskirts revolted against the city because the main power was in the city, and then they lost the rebellion, and basically they were punished, and all through the next 50 years or whatever. They have something called the Hunger Games in the city, which basically they grab a girl and a boy from each district, and they go um, to the capital and basically be put into a zone where they all kill each other or whatever, right? So, anyways, it's all about that. And then he also had the updated version of the trilogy of Planet of the Apes. Um, CGI made these films really good. In other words, because if you watch the original films, they're kind of they don't really follow each other, right? It's not like it's like 4 or 5 films or whatever. They're kind of like independent of each other when you watch them. And there was like a TV series as well. But those, it's all makeup, right? And it looked pretty good, but you could tell every time somebody was talking that they were talking through a mask, right? So this CGI kind of improved the telling of the story, and these 3 films are very, very good. So I basically found the whole collection of the old films and these 3 films all on Blu-ray in one package. So I already have these, so I'll just resell them. I'll have nice dust jackets on them as well. So, and it's basically about what would you say? Okay, so apes get smart and they basically take over the planet. basically is simple. And then he also has the two Deadpool films. Well, this one doesn't have a dust jacket on it. The one that I had didn't have a dust jacket on it. The one that was originally with these two did have a dust jacket on it, so I put it into my collection. And this one doesn't have a dust jacket. This one does. And this is extremely funny superhero. I think it's basically related to the X-Men. Is it the X-Men franchise, right? I think so, right? But it's basically about a guy who um, can grow back his body parts, right? Basically, he'll regrow it. So if you cut off his leg, he'll grow a baby leg, and that baby leg will continue growing until it gets to be an adult leg again, right? It takes a while. I mean, it doesn't take years or anything, but it does take, some days or whatever. So it's pretty funny. And he's really sarcastic. So Ryan Reynolds basically he's become like a multimillionaire playing one character, and that's that smart aleck, childlike man who doesn't grow up, right? And has a sarcastic wit. Um, and he plays that character in pretty much every film that he does. And most films, it doesn't work. Like the one that it didn't work the most that I found was probably the third um, Blade film, Blade Trinity, where he was in that one. That didn't work. The sarcasm didn't work at all. It took away because when you watch the first Blade film, I mean, like it's really serious. There's no joke. There's no joking in that film. It's life or death every time you take a step, right? And then you get finally to the third one, and then you have this smart alecky character, Ryan Reynolds. It just takes away from the whole seriousness of the film, right? I mean, it's like a visceral type of film, the Blade franchise, right? He kind of destroys that in the third film. But in Deadpool, they matched him up perfectly because it really works in Deadpool. If you haven't watched any of the Deadpool films, yeah, Ryan Reynolds is just perfect for that film. It makes me extreme. Deadpool, because of Ryan Reynolds, Deadpool is one of my favorite, like the superhero franchise films, right? I'll watch it over and over again and never get bored of it, right? So, all right, I have both of them already. So, and then he has the the Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2. There was supposed to be a trilogy, but I guess they didn't do all that well with Garfield as as Spider-Man, right? What's Garfield? John? Was it Garfield? I keep, anyways. The Toby. What was Toby's last name? The first three films of Spider-Man. The first three films were pretty good. These ones were pretty good as well, but they didn't do as well, and then they stopped at two. So we had both of those. What else did we have? Okay, so we had um, the Transformers. He didn't have all of them though. He's missing one, right? There were five Transformer films. He has the four, and then they had an offshoot one, Bumblebee, which he does have. All right, so Michael Bay just yeah. Most of Michael Bay's films are crap. Okay, to be honest, they're crap. But there's two films that are pretty good, and those are the ones that probably gave him the opening to do all the other films that he did badly, right? So maybe not, because even people think The Island is not a very good film, but I really enjoy that film. I like the concept and the concept of that film, and that really drives that film for me. That idea of cloning somebody and then growing them in an environment and pretending that. Anyways, I don't want to ruin the whole premise of the film is what makes it enjoyable. But basically, it's about cloning. So let's say it's like your insurance policy. Basically, you grow somebody, and they live in this compound, and they just basically are there to wait until you need a new liver, or need a new lung or something, and so then they kill it, take the lung, and give it to you. Right? So that way you don't have to work, wait on transplants and stuff. But it's millions of dollars to do it in the film. But that premise was really attractive to me, in that it was cool to explore that in film form, right? Just like The Matrix was cool to explore um, whether what you see is real or not, or are you hooked up to a machine and you just don't realize it, right? That kind of concept is pretty cool, and then they make a film out of it, which is kind of cool. I like those type of films that have Gattaca was another one. Most people didn't like Gattaca, but I thought it was kind of cool that world that Gattaca created, right? So that was what I liked about the island, and Armageddon wasn't all that bad. It wasn't great or anything, but it was kind of like a fun adventure film to watch. But when he got these films, yeah, um, not not all that great. Basically, I didn't grow up with the Transformers. It came out when I was in my 20s, but I think it was late teens, early 20s, somewhere around there. And I used to watch them all the time. The cartoon, the TV series cartoons, right? That's what everybody grew up on, were those TVs. And then they said, oh, they're going to start making films about that. Awesome, but they didn't really follow any of the storylines of the cartoon itself. And then when Michael Bay, when they did the CGI and everything else of it, the camera is so close to all the Transformers that it's hard to figure out what they're doing when they're fighting. It's like so close. Is that an arm flying by, or is that a leg? What is that? What is that? You know what I mean? When they transform, it's hard to tell how they transform, and it's a combobulated mess. The action scenes in a lot of those Transformers films, because the camera is way too close. You need to move the camera back. It's all CGI, but if you understand moving the camera back so you get a full, it's not like so close that you start getting confused on where, who's fighting who and whose arm is that? Is that an arm or a leg? Is that, you understand what I mean? It's, anyways, they could have done a much better job at the Transformers films, but they made five of them and Bumblebee. So then you have the first two out of the three Expendables films, or they're up to four now, aren't they? And they didn't even open the first one, and there's the second one. So these are fun. The fun about them is probably not as appealing to the younger audience because they didn't grow up with Schwarzenegger and Jet Li and Sylvester Stallone and all those 80s and 90s action stars. Stallone basically got them all together, Dolph Lundgren, and put them all together and had them all in one movie, which was quite fun to watch because you grew up with all those guys. The action films. He brings them all together, right? Even Jason Statham, and who was a more 2000s action star, and get some MMA in there with Randy Couture. Anyways, but the basic core of it were all the 80s and 90s action stars from that time period, right? And it was fun to watch them all in one film, right? Then he had the Pirates of the Caribbean, right? First, the four of them. I think there four. I think there was four of them, right? So um, maybe there was five. I can't remember. But the Johnny Depp franchise. These were fun. Disney's version of swashbuckling pirates. They were quite fun to watch. Actually, all of them, even the later ones. Usually a franchise will start to dip down after maybe the second film. These ones kind of hold up. So, and then he also collected the X-Men. Now I think there's 10 films in the X-Men franchise, or is it nine? No, I think it's 10. Dark Phoenix was the 10th one, if I remember correctly. So you have the first three the X-Men, then X-Men 2, and then X-Men The Last Stand 3. So the three main X-Men films, and then you have the three Wolverine films, which was X-Men Origins Wolverine, then The Wolverine, and then Logan. All right, those three films, and then they jump to the James McAvoy version of Charles Xavier, where there's some sort of time change. I can't remember it, and then they have four of those films, and those were First Class. What were they? First Class, X-Men First Class, X-Men Days of Future Past, and X-Men Apocalypse, and then Dark Phoenix. Dark Phoenix was the fourth one, right? So, um, and it was a bit confusing because the first three X-Men and then the Wolverines are in one kind of universe, and then when they jump to the McAvoy character and they go into the past and how Charles Xavier lost the workings of his legs and what was the relationship between him and Magneto and Mystique and all those. And then they kind of killed that timeline, and now they're in a new timeline because um, there's a couple characters I think died, and then they're back in the films again. You're going, how did that happen? I thought they were dead or whatever, that kind of thing. And then the reason why this person could be there that they wouldn't be if you're in the first X-Men universe is because the future got changed in one of the films, right? So it was a bit confusing, but overall, the X-Men franchise is quite fun. All 10 of the films were fun to watch. So if you haven't watched them, go ahead. But, a lot of people are getting oversaturated with superhero films, right? So, but I don't know if they're going to make any more X-Men, but there's 10 of them right now. So, and then on that note, they also had, um, he has, he also collected the MCU. So he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. I think there was 21 films. I'll put it up here how many exactly there were. I think there was 21 films in the Infinity Saga. Started with Iron Man and ended with Spider-Man No Way Home. Spider-Man, what was it? Spider-Man it was the Avengers Endgame, and then there was the Spider-Man film, and that was the end of the Infinity Saga. And he has most of them here. There are some missing, like he doesn't have the Ant-Man franchises, the Ant-Man ones in here, and Iron Man 3 he doesn't have, um, but most of them he has, and most of them, some of them have subcovers, some of them don't. Anyways, I had most of these. Actually, I have all the MCUs in the Infinity Saga except for Ant-Man. I've been looking for Ant-Man for the longest time, and I just haven't. I've come across it a couple of times, but when I've gone to try to buy it, somebody else bought it before I bought it, right? So I don't really want to buy it new. So anyway, so if you haven't watched it, the Infinity Saga, I mean, if you like superheroes and you grew up on comics like I did with all these superheroes, right, and see them on screen is really, really cool, right? So, um, so this whole thing about, each film is kind of its own individual film, um, but there's a little thread of the main storyline which comes to fruition in all the Avenger films when they all kind of come together, right? There's three. There's the Avengers, and there's Avengers Infinity War, Avengers um, Endgame. I think there's three, or was it four? Anyways, however many there were, the main storyline is the Avengers storyline, and all the other offshoots kind of add to that story as the franchise goes along. Um, and it's basically about Thanos collecting all the Infinity Stones. There's like 5 or 6 Infinity Stones. He's going to collect them all, put them in a gauntlet, basically snap his fingers and make half the population of the universe disappear. Um, because there's just too many of us, right? Um, so that's the whole premise of it. But you have each film is kind of a story in itself, but also a main movement of that Thanos Infinity story, the Infinity Stone story, right? So and they're fun to watch. It's just that the problem with it is that, and then you have the DC films as well. They basically took over Hollywood. They basically took over theaters. So when you go see movies, pretty much like most of them are all superhero films, right, or some offshoot of superhero films. Same as on television. So many of them are like offshoots of characters that may not have the draw to put in a major film, but do have a draw enough to put on TV, right? So you have, like, I have like Iron Fist, which was my favorite character growing up. And you have, Power Man and those ones that were on uh, Daredevil, that kind of thing. So they're fun to watch, but when they took over and they basically all the money in Hollywood is being spent on superhero films, it kind of takes away from other films that you want to watch as well. But man, people really love I mean, so many films. How many Marvel MCU films are there now? What, like 25, 26, something like that. All right, so where do we go after that? Let's see, we did that. Okay, we got Terminator Salvation. Um, The only real Terminator films. This is a franchise that's not as well done as others, where you want to have all those films. Basically, the only ones uh, for me that I want in my collection are the ones done by Cameron, which are the first two, and then the third one would be the one with Sarah Connor and that came later, right? Those three films. That's the main films that you want with the Terminator franchise. All the other ones are just the offshoots and stuff like that. It's just whatever, you know what I mean? So um, there really was only two for the longest time, and then they came out with the Sarah Connor, where Sarah Connor returns in a Terminator film, and that one was quite fun to watch. Um, and then we have Green Lantern on Steelbook. I already have the Steelbook version of this. Another film by Ryan Reynolds. It just doesn't work. All right, the ones that do work are the only ones that do work. Is the Deadpool films. All right, then you have Despicable Me, the first film of it. Now this is okay. I never really got into it. I don't really collect animation films unless it's from like Japanese anime, Pixar, or the classic Disney films. Then you have Robin Hood. This is an extremely good film. Who did this? Did my favorite director, American director, do this? I think so. Right? It was Ridley Scott that did it. Yeah, Ridley Scott. And Russell Crowe had a time period during this period of time. He did this film. He did A Beautiful Mind, and a few others that were extremely good. And yeah, he was a very good actor. And we have Ryan Gosling in The Ides of March with George Clooney. George Clooney, yeah, George Clooney. I watched this, but I don't remember it, so I'm not going to say anything about it. Then we got Real Steel. This was kind of a fun film, seeing Hugh Jackman playing um, not playing Wolverine, but yet it's still in the science fiction film. It wasn't too bad. Goon, but Hockey Goons was okay. Popular film in Canada. The Warrior. I watched this film. This is pretty good, but it was hard to with let's say a film like Rocky. You felt for Sylvester Stallone. You rooted for him. It was like a character that you kind of fell in love with. It was hard to do that with the character in this film, so it didn't work as well. Um, then we have a Pacific Rim in 3D. He really liked the 3D films. Now this is fun about the gaijus, well, like mechanical gaijus where they go out, but I think they really uh, miscast what's his name from the motorcycle biker gang films. What was his name? I'll put it up if I can't see it here. Right? You just I don't know. If you did watch Sons of Anarchy and you saw him in that, he has those rugged good looks. With that goatee kind of growing, that's blonde and everything, and he's a tough guy, but he's also a sweetheart kind of thing. And then you see him in this film, it just doesn't work. Um, you don't see him as a futuristic, warrior in a like a almost like a transformer. It didn't work very well. Um, but Del Toro did a good job in it. And then you have Safe House, another Ryan Reynolds film. Denzel Washington, one of the great actors, would carry this film. Right? Then we have Inception, which is an extremely good film. Was this Christopher Nolan as well? I think so, right? Yeah, Christopher Nolan. If you have not looked at Christopher Nolan, go look at him. Go watch all of his films. All of his films are very good. Um, so, and Inception is no exception to it, right? Inception. And we have the Lincoln Lawyer. There we go. Matthew McConaughey. It was pretty boring, based on I think a John Grisham book. I'm not sure. And we have Acts of Valor. This is a brutal film. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's not very good. And they actually put out a steelbook version for it. Who would think, right? Happy Gilmore during the time of Adam Sandler when he was like in his just leaving after Saturday Night Live, going out on his own and doing those films that were quite funny. I watched all of them. I would they should have put out an Adam Sandler package that had all of his comedies from the '90s or whatever. Right? all together in one package. It would be cool. Happy Gilmore and Billy Madison and those films at that time. Lone Survivor, um, starring Mark Wahlberg. Sorry, I'm not a huge fan of Mark Wahlberg. Probably the only film that I've seen him in that I really, really enjoyed was Boogie Nights, and that's not because he was in it. It was because um, Paul Thomas Anderson is just an extremely good director. He has the touch of gold when it comes to all of his films. If you haven't seen it, um, I mean, he even did the Adam Sandler film, which Adam Sandler did an extremely good job, where he didn't even play a comedian. He played was in a drama. What was that was called? I can't remember. Anyways, so I don't know. I haven't watched Lone Survivor, so I'm not sure if it's any good or not. And we have We Are the Millers, not all that great of a film, and Law Abiding Citizen. What's his name? Jamie Foxx is in it, but it's Gerald Butler that drives this film. Plays a guy who always law abiding and his family gets killed, and he decides to take the law into his own hands. We got Mission Impossible 1. That franchise is pretty good. Hi. That franchise is very good. I enjoyed all of them. Mission Impossible 2. What were there? Like 7 films in it? And Ghost Protocol. So, and then no more. So we didn't collect the whole Mission Impossible franchise. I have like a steel book of all the films in one steel book. That's one that's on my shelf, so I don't really need these ones. What else do we have? Can we go through all of those? Yes, we did. Okay, then he had the two Hobbits in 3D with those 3D front covers, um, but he doesn't have the third one, Unexpected Journey and The Desolation of Smaug. But he doesn't have the third one. Um, I'm not sure where it went, so it kind of makes these kind of pointless. When when you're talking about a franchise and you're going to resell the franchise, it's extremely difficult to sell the individual films unless you have somebody that will buy them individually and go looking for them. But most people just don't want to bother. They'll wait until they find um, all of the films being sold at once and then buy it, whether it's in one package or all of them individually, right? So, like if I was, especially the perfect example of that is the Twilight series. There's like four films in the Twilight series, I think, if I remember correctly, 4 or 5. Anyways, the individual ones. I mean, it was an extremely popular franchise, especially for women. They watched that like in droves. So, but try to sell any of them, can't sell them. They'll just sit on your shelf forever. But if you can get all of them together and sell them as one, you can sell them for a good amount of money, right? But individually, nobody will buy them. Put them together, you could try to sell, let's say, the second one or the first one for like $1, and nobody's going to buy them. But you could, if you got all 4 of them, you could sell it for 20, right? So which would be $5 each, right? So um, yeah, it's strange when it comes to franchises. People want all of the films. They don't want to try to find them all individually. They want all the films together. And actually, sometimes they'll even pay a premium for it. Um, Usually, when you buy more than one, you want a discount. But with films, franchise films, let's say, there's what would be a good one? The Transporter series. There's 3 Transporter films. Try to sell them individually. People may buy them, but not. You may have to sell them for like $2 or $3 each, maybe even $1 on Blu-ray. But if you get all 3 of the franchise, 3 of them, you can sell them for $15, $5 each. So it's actually, you don't get a discount. Actually, it ends up being a premium a lot of the time. All right, so what else is here? Okay, we got. Oh, speaking of the transporters, you have 1, 2, and 3, and they're all new. They're all still in their plastic. So he got them, but he didn't watch them. So maybe he had them on DVD originally. Maybe he watched them on DVD originally and then upgraded to the Blu-ray, but he never opened them because he wasn't going to open them until he actually watched them, and maybe he didn't go back to watch them. So this is cool. They're all new. So you can whenever you get people like them new rather than used. They want to use price on a new thing. It's still used even though it hasn't been opened because it's not being sold by a store, right? So, but you can get a bit of a premium on a new one compared to a used one. So if I had the transporter, um, but it's opened, maybe I can sell it for $3. But because this one's closed, I could probably sell it for 6. Right? People like them to be new, so they know that the discs work. If it's new, they know the discs work, and they'll pay a bit of a premium for them, right? Um, what else do we have here? Oh, he also had the first, I think, first seven of the Fast and Furious films. All right. So the first 7. Now there's 10. I think there's a total of 10 films in the Fast and Furious. The 10th one just came out recently. I have it. I have it on. I don't know if I have it in Steelbook, but I have the collection, all 9 of them on Blu-ray in one collection, which is cool. But then they come out with another one. Bang! Now they have 10. So now I'll look for the package, all of them in one package, all 10 of them, right? So and then I try to get rid of the one with 9 in it, right? So I think that is all of. So yeah, so all of those films that I just showed you, $160. So I just have. Remember, I was going to go back to books right afterwards, and then we'll be done. All right, and there's only a bit of books left. All right, so here we have the Cambridge University Press, the Sophocles Ajax. All right, Sophocles is one of the great tragedy playwrights of ancient Greece. And Ajax is one of the plays that he put out. They have a festival every year, and playwrights would come and put plays on, and then they would vote who uh, who had the best play, and Sophocles would win more often than anybody else. So his plays are extremely good. If you have not read any of them, and then I found 4 uh, Everyman Library books. All right, so I've spoken about the Everyman Library, the modern version of it. The most recent version started coming out in '91 or '92, and they're up to 416 of them now. 416 volumes in this library of classic works. All right, so this one is Mary Renault's "The King Must Die" and "The Bull from the Sea." This one is actually number 409 in the collection. All right, I've not read it, so I'm not sure. Then we have the Old Curiosity Shop from Charles Dickens. All right, this one is numbered 209 in the series. All right, um, Dickens is good, but I really liked David Copperfield and The Golden Bowl by Henry James. All right, this one is numbered 117. So if you're looking for the numbering, if you want to collect this series of books, if you're an avid reader and you like classics, the Everyman Library, the hardcover versions are really nice. They're cloth bound with a nice dust jacket, and they're really nice to look on the shelf. I would suggest not to take the dust jacket off, even though they look nicer without the dust jackets on, because they all have this type of spine in different colors. They look really nice, really I don't know what you would call it, professional, like you'd be in a professor's study or whatever, right? Um, but you just wreck the book after a while when you do it that way. So I would suggest you keep the dust jackets on them. I actually put Mylar on the dust jackets as well. That's why this is shiny, because it has Mylar on it, right? I have not read The Golden Bowl, so. And then the 4th one is Middlemarch by George Eliot, one of my favorite 19th century writers. This woman wrote probably my favorite novel from that era, and that's Silas Marner. Middlemarch is extremely good as well. Well, all of George Eliot's stuff is really good. And this one is, what number is this one? Number 6. This is number 6 in the collection. All right. So I got 4 more to add. So I counted all of them because I was arranging them because I had a bunch of doubles in them. I was taking pictures of it and selling, so I arranged them all and counted them all. I have 129 now of the 416. So I've been collecting this series since the '90s. Well, actually the early 2000s. Um, and I've gotten 129 of them out of 416. So I don't know if I'll ever get all of them, but they're fun to collect anyways. All right. So I think that's everything. I do have other movies upstairs that need to be brought into the camera that I've watched, but I wanted to get this big haul out of the way. And so in the future video, you'll see some other stuff, a lot of Disney and the Bourne franchise. I have most 4 out of the 5 movies I have on Steelbook now, Steelbook Blu-ray. So I'm just watching those again, and those will be in a future video as well. And I'll do another video on my movie library actually. Uh, Getting almost to the end of the director's series. All right, so hope you enjoyed this film. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, give me a thumbs up. Think about subscribing if you like this content. I do it every week or two, depending on how busy I am at work, and I'm always picking up stuff. And if you watch my videos, I have over 100 of them now. A lot of them, this style of video, you'll see that buying things new, you don't really need to if you actually want to go out and start looking for stuff. You can find it. Like I said, I found like pretty much every movie in the MCU, all the different franchises, most of the films in the Star Wars, most of the films, all the Harry Potters, all, and I'm finding them for like $1 or $2, a disc or whatever, right? Whereas if you were to go on Amazon or go wherever and buy it new, you would end up, 20, 30, $40, right? So you don't really need to do that. There's just so many of them out there now. Now it is shrinking, but there's a lot of stuff. And if you really want to do it on the cheap, then do DVDs. They're still coming out with DVDs, so it's not like DVDs is at a certain time period and then they stopped producing DVDs. Now they're still putting DVDs out, right? So if you really want to get movies on the cheap and have a really awesome home video library, DVDs, you're gonna find them for $1 or less, and you can have thousands of films that you really enjoy in your collection all on DVD and watch them as you so choose. You don't have to be a slave to the streaming services. So that's it. My son needs to use the washroom. All right, and I'll see you in my next video. And you have a great day, and bye for now.